Hello and welcome back to this SlimDevOps episode 55. Welcome back, Pete. You're back after a summer hiatus. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I am doing really well. Yeah, it was quite a summer, I think, for everybody. But yeah, I think I said last stream we welcomed our first child to the world, my wife and I. So I think last stream I was probably like bags under the eyes and hadn't eaten in a few days, that kind of thing. But things are going well. We're back up and at 'em, and baby's growing, and we're doing good. How are you doing? How's your summer?
I'm fine, although I'm being told that the worst has happened and that at the last moment my audio has failed. So I'm going to just try and fix that very quickly on the fly.
Okay. So people can only hear me, so I should
You can
monologue
hear me,
here
but
for a little
I
bit.
sound like Metal Mickey. If anyone from the UK wants to explain to me in chat what the Metal Mickey is, feel free.
I don't know, but sure, close enough. Well, hello, chat. It's good to be back. Yeah, hope everybody's doing well. Yeah, excited for the stream today. I think Martin told me that we have Mac in chat and we have Danny in chat. So I was like nervous about the JavaScript, nervous about the containers, but between Mac, Danny, I think we've got our dream team here to talk about this stuff. So should be a good stream. And yeah, while Martin pulls that back up, I don't know. It's just been good. It feels like coming home to be back on stream and kind of see everybody. So yeah, we got our old setback too, which is really nice. Good to see.
So I'm just going to ask
happen.
if my audio sounds normal again, or if it's still busted. If the chat would let me know, I hope it's good. Otherwise, we're going to have to very quickly downstream and bring the stream back up again. Fixed it. Okay, awesome. That's great. I've just learned something there, by the way. I get to say something new as well, for the Linux nerds out there. Hashtag blame Pipewire. So that's new and interesting. But thank you for the confirmation that it's okay. I can fix that as well. Thank you, Tommy. That's very helpful. There. Hopefully you should be hearing me in beautiful mono now. There we go. Well, that was exciting. Right. Let's. So Pete's being. Keeping everyone entertained, I should say. So thank you very much. Welcome back to, oh my gosh, who have we got here? We've got Mac, Eric, which is our podcast, and Danny and Tommy. Have I missed anyone? So welcome back to you all. So
welcome back, everybody.
Aside from enjoying family life, what have you been tinkering with over the summer period?
Well, and yeah, I'm gonna share it today. So I really wanted a personal blog, right? And so this is what a dummy I am when it comes to like learning new technologies and what my expectations were for the first 6 months of my son's life, right? So I said, I'm going out on paternity leave. I've wanted to learn a new JavaScript framework for a little while. I'll talk a little more about that. I'll try Svelte. I'll learn Svelte like right after my son's born because I'm gonna have all this time off. And so that was obviously like a huge disaster, right? I tried to do a few tutorials on 3 hours of sleep and I didn't get very far with it at all. I said, I'm going to build myself a personal blog in Svelte and that'll like kill two birds with one stone and I'll do this. So it didn't work. But then, Slim has a really good paternity leave policy. And so I was able to take some weeks off, then come back to work for a little bit. And then I just took the month of September off while my wife went back to work.
Right.
And during that time, we were sleeping better. The babies, I'm not saying it's easy. It's not, but we're in a better steady state. And I kind of got back into it. And through community Mac and I are in front end Horse, I'd known about Astro.js. And I'll go into some of the cool stuff, but I actually was able to build this personal blog in Astro.js. It was this really cool experience, really intuitive developer framework. And so when we talked about getting the stream back on air, I said, why don't I share some of that stuff? Because I still have a lot of work left to do on the blog, as people see, but I actually deployed it using Google Cloud Run, and it's successful. So that was really cool. That was kind of like my crowning achievement of that time. Yeah.
I mean, this sounds very...
What have you been up to? Yeah.
So in the off season, OBS Studio 28 has been released, which has jam-packed with all sorts of new features, which are very exciting. But also it's quite a big change. So there's a bunch of ABI breakage, so a lot of the plugins and things all had to catch up with using the new Qt 6 and various other internal changes. And so I've been updating all of my stuff to OBS Studio 28, and in the process ended up making my own builds of OBS Studio to make it easier to run and maintain OBS Studio. And I've been using some container technology to create those clean builds locally. So not Docker or Podman or any of those usual, things. I've been using systemd nspawn, which is a container manager that exists within the Linux sort of ecosystem. It's part of the systemd suite of tools. So I've set that up, and I have some scripts that manipulate that, create these clean build environments, and I was very happy with that. But today I was made even happier because Danny, who's here in our chat, submitted a pull request to the GitHub project that enables all of that build process to run as GitHub actions and workflows. So on that repository, when I tag a release, it will automatically build multiple versions of OBS Studio against multiple versions of Ubuntu and spit them out as artifacts in the release pages of the GitHub project. So that is super awesome. And it's using systemd nspawn is a workflow I use a lot for development, local development. So this unlocks the same capability in a bunch of other projects that I use. So I'm now going to be looking at exploiting the GitHub CI/CD pipeline for a bunch of stuff.
Cool. And what is nspawn? It's like it's a container runtime, or it's a container builder?
It's a container runtime basically. So you can think of it a bit like Docker, except that it doesn't have the sort of the Docker build thing. You sort of fabricate that bit yourself. But it's a way to create and run and launch and manage containers, and also virtual machines, it turns out. But I find it useful because it can do cross architecture. So in the streams where I made our own Raspberry Pi operating system that was container enabled and our own Raspberry Pi optimized base images, I was using that same systemd nspawn because I could run it on my local workstation, but build ARM containers on an x86 workstation, which was very useful.
Oh, so very cool.
So thank you, Danny. I shall be having lots of fun, and I'll be chatting to you about how we can do more with that workflow. I'd also like to welcome GooFriend to the stream. Hello to you. Thanks for stopping by.
Hello. Welcome. It's funny. Like I was all proud to share with you that I upgraded to Ubuntu 22.04. Also
congratulations
over my holidays. Yes. Was not able to update my desktop over to Ubuntu Mate, which is still on the to-do list, but like that was like a long time thing. And I was like, well, I should do this. And I was in a very like Martin-esque, I will say, and kind of situation, or Martin and Peter-esque situation, where in order to build the container for my blog, I ended up updating my desktop from like 16 to 22.04. It was like one of those moments, but the kid was at the grandparents'. I had 6 hours to kill. There was some, football on the television, and I said, this is a good time to do it. So yeah,
very good. And so Eric, who goes by our podcast, says that he was reading about this discussion about building these tools and couldn't believe how it was all possible. And I was surprised as well, because I didn't realize that the GitHub actions run inside of virtual machines, so you don't have the complexities of nested container tools that you might run into if you were doing this on GitLab, for example. So I found this very enlightening and something I want to be doing more of. And also welcome to Corinzin. I'm glad you thought that sounded cool, because I certainly thought Danny was super cool coming up with that addition to the project. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of wondering, I didn't set up too much for this project, but we're working on another project that a lot of the infrastructure that we're using to do some of the KubeCon launches and stuff that we'll be talking about in the next couple of weeks, we've been setting up a lot of sort of DevOps infrastructure for that, and some cool GitHub actions that trigger container builds, trigger container slimming actually on the Slim platform. I think since we've last streamed, there's been a lot of work on kind of APIs and different instrumented type stuff that we've been working on, that eager to share but still in development. And it's been kind of cool to see that from my point of view. I'm not doing the development work for that, obviously, but to talk to the developers who are working on that and realize that a lot of that stuff's either running in virtual machines or containers. And now, having worked with containers, I understand some of the benefits, some of the limitations, and how that works. So, working with sort of all of the different CI platforms, like in knowing containers, you get a lot better sense of what's happening kind of under the covers on that. And eager to share. I know Steven, our co-op, who was streaming with you over the summer, he's been working on some of that stuff as well. So maybe we can have him come on and talk about, I know there's one particular project on a CI pipeline that we've been doing that he's been working on. So maybe he can come share some of that stuff with us.
Yeah.
And that sounds great. And I wonder if we dust off that DevOps 101 stuff that we had kind of started on and then sort of moved away from. I know we did a GitLab example, but it would be great to see some GitHub actions. And
that's a really good idea. Actually, we should revisit that piece on CI/CD and look at GitHub. Definitely. Corinzin points out in chat that GitHub actions can get really expensive really fast. Now, I agree. I was cautious about that, but I am reliably informed that because the project that I've got is open source, it won't incur any costs, which I hope is the case, because it will build OBS Studio 14 times and attach close to 100 megabytes per build to the releases file. So we'll see how we get on. I will report back, but I think it will be fine because it's all open source stuff. I think Danny knows a bit more about this, because it was Danny that convinced me it's all going to be just fine. Right, and Max says they're really looking forward to getting their first taste of Astro with a side of Docker files. Ooh. So is it time to sort of jump into what you've been tinkering with?
Let's we can jump over to the browser window. And Mac, I wasn't sure, and sorry I didn't let you know this was happening ahead of time. I wasn't sure if we were still going to be friends, since I was not in the Vue camp anymore, and I'm kind of going to the dark side here. I didn't want to tell you about the Svelte thing, because I didn't want the Vue people on Front End Horse to know that I was tinkering with Svelte. But I think Astro is actually this great platform, because actually the thing that was sort of the trigger for me to try it was that Astro actually lets you integrate components from other JavaScript frameworks into it, and it's like seamless. I mean, it's like really completely seamless. So people who had seen the stream before saw us do our Vue.js example, and we were working with Nuxt, which is a framework for Vue, for a long time. That's what like our Slim websites are built on and stuff like that. And I really liked Vue, but it didn't feel like, I wanted to try something else. I liked it, I didn't love it, and it's mostly just because I struggle with JavaScript sometimes, and I don't always know where things are going, and it can be a little much. I liked how Vue sort of broke things down into components and then styles, and the sort of SaaS aspects were built into it. But, there are some things with Vue that I didn't totally get, a lot of there's a lot of kind of shorthand and that kind of stuff that I found confusing. So I was looking for something else. And like I said, I tried to learn Svelte, and Svelte was great. It was like almost better. It's a little more streamlined than Vue, I found. The problem I had with Svelte was, and this is kind of known in the Svelte community, it's still very much in development. So like SvelteKit, which is very similar to Nuxt, but for Svelte, it's a framework and it has components built in and all this. It's meant to get you up to speed faster. It's still very early, and so they're making a lot of changes to it. And that kind of drives some people nuts, and some people like understand why. And so it's a bit of a debate. I don't know enough about it to sound off on that debate. But as somebody new coming to it, who is kind of like a sort of, I'll call myself a weak JavaScript developer, it was too much that I was finding tutorials from the old Svelte kit, and then they didn't work in the new Svelte kit. And then I tried to learn the new Svelte kit, and it wasn't probably as documented, or there weren't as many tutorials online as there could be.
Right.
And I just got kind of frustrated with it, and I said, like the tutorial, but like can't get something working in production, So then I stumbled on Astro, and I was like, okay, well, Astro will let me build Svelte components if I want to, but then also has all this like cool built-in stuff. And once I started getting into it, it was so seamless and intuitive that I just really loved it. Now I've gotten to the point where it's like complex enough that, oh, Martin, are you showing my browser window or your own?
Mine. I thought I'd load up the Astro website for those people that might be wondering where it is.
Yep. Yeah, so astro.build. And, so I don't actually know like a ton about the history and all of that of Astro. So if people in chat know, like, please sound off. But I really like their kind of marketing, because this is really what I did, like rebuilt my blog in Astro out of curiosity. Holy shit. And, it's got some goals, like, one of the goals that it has is to not run any JavaScript in the browser, which is kind of cool. Oh, sorry, that's Svelte. But they really go for like really light pages. And it actually kind of compiles all of the from JavaScript. It compiles everything you need into a site. So there's not a lot of stuff like running on the server and stuff like that. And that kind of comes into the container side in a minute, which is that it sort of like Astro itself is going to sort of output everything into a single file, a single folder for you. So it's still called an SSR site. It's still like, server-side rendered site. But it really tries to limit the amount of kind of like back and forth JavaScript calls, and you're not doing a lot of Ajax and that kind of stuff in it. So, yeah.
Okay, excellent. So that's a really good background. I've been enjoying the framework wars that have been sparking off in the chat. Mac and Corazin have been trading blows, but they've all come together because they actually both use Vue for sort of work and play. And Danny has helped clear up what the free tier for GitHub provides for your credits and what have you, and it seems ample. Hello, Charafu, welcome back. And Graham, welcome back.
Charafu.
I know, Graham, you were interested in this topic. We've just been talking through sort of how Pete arrived at choosing Astro. We haven't got into the actually, making a site using Astro and containers just yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and just for everybody, I mean, everybody who has watched this show before, but for new people, or if you don't remember, I am not much of a JavaScript developer. I started with Python. I've learned a little Rust. JavaScript is pretty new to me, so don't expect to be like wowed with design and all of that. I will say the community, Mac and I, are in a front-end course. They have a lot of really great Astro devs in there who can really help if you're looking for that. Our interest at Slim is kind of in the container side, and so that, I guess that's the other component of this project was, a lot of people who are going to build Astro or Vue sites, they're just going to deploy them on Netlify or Vercel or Dino, which are really great platforms. And if you just really don't care too much about your deployment, and you're not interested in the back end and the DevOps side of things, that's great. I really said, I work at Slim.AI. We're about containers and about secure containers and performant containers and small containers. Like, I'm not doing myself much of a favor if I don't try to deploy this in a container.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what led me down that path. I'm sure I could have deployed this on Netlify or Vercel or Dino pretty easily. But I chose to deploy it, and I ended up choosing Google Cloud Run in the end to deploy it. And because I wanted to kind of see what a serverless, kind of website would look like. And that was a pretty cool experience. There are a few hiccups, but what it led me to was actually doing this multi-stage build using the Caddy image, which is another thing that I wanted to talk about today. And I sort of found that through this website called Northflank that I think is a web hosting site. But they had a really kind of nice multi-stage build approach specifically for Astro, because just the way Astro compiles and sort of outputs what it needs, it was actually a bit tricky to just kind of like put it into a node container, call it a day, and go from there. So
okay,
yeah.
So Mac has apparently summoned assistance from the Front End Horse Discord, so we'll see if anyone
Oh no!
rocks up.
Oh, hi guys, hi everybody.
So we'll see if
I'm
anyone
encouraged.
rocks up. But if anyone that's familiar with Astro, more familiar with JavaScript, you know, we're quite happy to have backseat drivers on our streams here, because often we'll take on these little topics really just to shake something and see what we learn, and also where we fall flat on our faces, because sometimes it's the falling down that's actually the most interesting learning exercises.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So now I need to like really cop to stuff, because Mac's like outing my shyness or my imposter syndrome or whatever. I hadn't shared this project. I really wanted to share this project with the Front End Horse community, because I was so proud of myself for like getting an Astro site working. But the design of it is so bad that I was like, here's all these front end developers who are doing like animations and gradients and all this stuff, you know. It's like, and I'm going to show them this, like, you know, like looks like a site from 1993, because that's kind of how I roll when it comes to CSS.
That's back in vogue. It's back in vogue, that sort of OG website.
Yeah.
So Corazin says he's glad to hear this, Peter. One thing that is not discussed when people talk about Vercel and Netlify, etc., is that you are giving up on the ability to quickly redeploy on a different platform if needed. So some appreciation for that. And Tommy is also asking about Mate on NixOS. I haven't got back to NixOS. That is still on my lifetime bucket list of things that, you know, cool stuff I'd like to be involved with. So I will get there. But I think any spare time I have in the coming months, I'm going to be looking at getting back into some game development, and also creating some back-end services for desktop and mobile games that I can deploy in containers to sort of do some live interaction stuff. So there'll be a crossover of, like, you know, back-end game server services and stuff like that.
Cool.
Right then, do I need to switch to one of your desktop views, Pete?
Yeah, why don't we just go to the the browser window real quick, and I'll just kind of like do a quick run through on Astro, and I'm actually going to save. Oh, is that the right one? Why is that not coming through? Hold on, let me see what's going on with my screen sharing real quick. I might just need to reshare this real quick. Window. There we go.
I can push.
My apologies.
Try and...
No, I think that should do it. Yeah, so we should be on the Astro site right now.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, a little preview of my terrible designs there. So yeah, I'll walk through, and I'll just, I think what we said we were going to do, because I do have a project that's like all of my stuff. I just didn't want to push it to a public like Docker Hub repo or whatever.
Right.
Because it's already running on Google Cloud, and I could pull it into the Slim platform through our connectors on Google Cloud, but I thought it would be easier to just start a fresh Astro build project. We'll do some fun little like markdown stuff maybe or something. And then I can use the Docker file that I'm using for my personal one, and we can use that to build, like output the site and build it and go from there. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully it works. We haven't tested this too much, but so yeah, Astro, again, just cool. Like it's easy to just like start up and you know, create a project. Actually, I will share. Why don't we go through the actual like creation process, Martin? So if you jump over to the IDE, which is like my terminal window.
Sure.
You know, I'm just going to copy this command, and it takes you through this, you know, kind of setup phase. And I'm going to go through here. I'll start with just the basics, though. They do have some like template type sites, and there are actually like a lot of themes in Astro that you can choose from that I was exploring, but I didn't want to do that. I kind of wanted to learn all of this, so I started from scratch. I think one thing that, like, you know, there's a lot of stuff built into Astro, like Markdown support, and you know, you can add Tailwind CSS to it really easily. Like I said, you can add other components. So there's a lot of stuff that's built in. So just because you're choosing just the basics, I think they recommend that, just because it's like really impressive kind of how much stuff is built into it. You know, we can install the npm dependencies. It's got kind of this nice setup thing. It's gonna take a minute to do that. I do like the attention to detail in the visuals in sort of the current generation of, you know, command line utilities. Yeah, Yeah, exactly. And I'll say like everything about Astro is like has that feel. It's like very intuitive. It's kind of like, I don't know how to do this. Let me try this. Oh, that worked, and that's kind of like the vibe. So I won't do a GitHub thing. I also like its TypeScript support because I don't do a lot of like TypeScript. I know a lot of people are doing that. It's just like not something I've learned yet. And it's actually pretty good with, I know I've used other frameworks, and I think like this is the case with Vue. It's like if you tell Vue or Nuxt that you're using TypeScript, it's like you're using TypeScript, like,
Right.
and I don't even really know what that means. But like with Astro, you can kind of say like relax, you could say strict, you could do whatever you want, but then it's, it's pretty easy to do. So I'm just going to, go to test Astro, and then I'll pop open a code window, and I'm just going to switch over to see what that looked like. So let me just change my window real quick. And
so while you're doing that, yes, Danny and Graham are both correct. I am a sucker for animated things in the shell. Pretty colors.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, who isn't? So all right, I'll make this bigger for you guys a little bit. So yeah, so you can see here, right, like, so the very basic like project structure is going to be pretty similar to Vue, React, these types of framework type apps where you have a source file, you have a public file, you have components, which is where you're going to drop all your kind of Astro components. You have layouts, which are going to be your pages, and then you have an index page, and then you have your pages, which is, again, the index, and we can kind of jump in there.
So the pages is the content, and the layout.
The pages is the
theme.
The pages. Yeah, pages is the content, and then the layout is the framing of the page, the template of the page.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some like cool stuff that you can do, like you can actually put like markdown files in pages, and then if you apply a layout to it, which we can do in a minute, because I actually do this like throughout the blog. If you apply the layout to the markdown file, it will just automatically create like a blog page for you using that layout. So that's kind of a cool thing. They give you these basics. I'll run it in a second to show you kind of what it looks like. But all of the JavaScripty bits kind of go in this top part, kind of the three dashes to set that off. Then like Vue and like a lot of the other JavaScript frameworks, you're going to drop all your HTML or whatever it is that you need for your framing there. Yeah. And then, like Vue or Svelte, you can have a style section down at the bottom where you're putting in your CSS. The components are all kind of in the same boat. And, you can do pages.astro. So I promised one thing. So I'm going to just kind of iteratively go through this, and if I remember, Astro npm run Astro dev, I believe this should give me a site. And if I do this and we bounce back over to the, oops, what did I do? Browser window. What did I do wrong? Local host 3000. What's going on there? Oh,
is it running?
Accidentally. Yeah, I fat fingered quit it by accident.
Okay, there we go.
So yeah, so you get this like kind of nice starter template, and they're really good at onboarding and all that kind of stuff. But so that's kind of cool. But one of the things that I mentioned was adding other frameworks, and you can see you can add React, JSX, Vue, all of these other frameworks, if that's like what you're more comfortable with, or you just want to kind of do that kind of stuff. So, we can kind of go and just quickly add add Svelte to this project, just as easy as, using, npm add Svelte, right? So, if we bounce back over to the browser window or the IDE window, and come over here and do npm astro add Svelte. And it did not work. Oh, I just do Astro add Svelte. Sorry, I think that's the case. Or is it NG? Okay, cool. So I'm just going to install those dependencies. Can kind of show what's going on. I can say yes. And so we added that to the project. This is all going to kind of show up in my, what it's really doing is it's editing this astro.config file.
Right.
And, you can kind of do a lot of stuff in there manually, but, there's a lot of like npx. They also have like an Astro kind of command line thing, and it's not coming up for me for some reason. I don't know if I forgot to install it or something, but here we've added astro.svelte. And so, you don't, I don't know, in my experience, at least my kind of limited experience, you don't spend a lot of time in kind of package.json or doing stuff like that. A lot of the integrations and customizations for Astro that you're doing are here in, the Astro config file, which is kind of cool. But the sort of neat thing here is then I can come and create a Svelte component in my components just as easily as creating an Astro component. So I can say like a test.svelte, and it'll sort of automatically know that I have this there. I don't know that I can write a Svelte component off the top of my head, but I have one here I could probably copy in. Yeah, so, I have this kind of counter component, right? And then all I really have to do to do that is then I just need to import it, say, into my index page, right? And I can say, import, oh, you know what it is? I don't have, I don't know, for some reason I don't have my Svelte and, what's the other one? Astro VS Code plugins installed on this
right,
IDE. So
okay.
that's one of the things that's throwing me off a little bit right now, but that's okay. We'll persevere. So if I do that and I kind of come back and I, run my, oh, and then I have to add it somewhere. So let's just add it to the bottom of this so we don't like kind of destroy the beauty of the Astro test page. And same, a lot of the same, just kind of like syntax and that you would expect from things like, Vue or React and stuff like that. This is just adding a component the same way we would do it in any of those. So, I'll come back here, I'll run the site again. Okay. And if we bounce back into the browser, cool. Now I've got this little Svelte counter thing that probably doesn't work because I'm bad at JavaScript. But, that was just like a quick copy paste. But now I'm running both Svelte components and Astro components, and it's as easy as a couple lines of code. So I have that sort of interoperability.
And this was part of your original selection criteria, because you started out by wanting to use Svelte, but what you've done is you've found an easier way to get on that ladder without having to overcome the complexities of learning Svelte from the outset.
Yeah, exactly. And having to sort of, kind of navigate SvelteKit and learn that and get specialized there. And if I'm being honest, like now I'm probably doing more components in Astro, because you can do Astro components as well. But it is nice to kind of go back and forth, and it's been a good like learning experience for that. So cool. Yeah, so that was one thing I wanted to show. The other thing that I did as part of this project was actually to start using Tailwind, which I'd never used before.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that.
Cool. So Tailwind CSS, it's like a totally different take on CSS. So, like, I don't know, you've probably written CSS, and I write really, really awful CSS, but, you spend a lot of time kind of being like, okay, this is my...
as well.
yeah. Exactly. Right. Like, oh, look, I learned how to code. CSS a programming language. I don't know. Let's debate. Right. And it, like, Tailwind is based on this notion that I'd always thought every time I wrote CSS, and then like I thought I was just too stupid at CSS to like be able to do it, which is like, when I want, like, let's say I have like a headline on my site, right? I have an H1 and I want to style it, and that's my like title headline, right? And I want it to be 18 point, and I want it to be, a dark gray, and I want it to, turn white on hover or something like that, right? Like
Yeah.
those are just like basic things, right? And then I go into CSS and I create a style that's like title, and then I do all the CSS that I need to do to make all of that happen with the margins and all that kind of stuff. Well, like all of those are separate thoughts, right? Like an 18 point, like a large title, a gray title, and then on hover, turn it white, right? And so what Tailwind does is it basically says, you just type all of that into your HTML. We have you covered on all of this. So widths, heights, what's the color of the text, like a full kind of like color palette. And, so when you go to do it, all you're doing is kind of like putting in, let me show you some of the component, or no, not components, sorry. Let me just show like kind of like a real example. These are not containers that we're talking about, but like, something like, what's a good one? Flex stuff, spacing, sizing, typography. Like, so for like sizing something, like if you do W0, it's going to give it a width of 0 pixels. If you do W2, it's going to give it a width of 0.5 rem. So it's kind of, it's a cool, different way of thinking about CSS. And then Astro makes it really, really easy to import it. So let me kind of just go down to, I need to find this real quick. There is, oh, you know what? I think this is actually in a different section. So I'll just search for Tailwind because it's in here. Yeah. So, it's just another one of these things that you can kind of add to your project really quickly, and then you can start using Tailwind. So there we go, like npx add Tailwind, and I'll just, kind of type this in over on my IDE, add Tailwind. I think when I did this on my project, I actually did it using the Astro config file instead, but so I'll go through and install that, and then I'll be able to start using Tailwind in my CSS, right? So that's kind of cool, right? I didn't have to think about too much. I'm not like adding a new CSS SaaS compiler and all that kind of stuff. I'm just like adding Tailwind, then I get to use Tailwind, and I'm done. It makes it easy to kind of do it. So those are kind of the main things with Astro that I wanted to show. Let's talk about the kind of Docker side, right? So okay. If we go back over into the kind of the builder. So I'm going to clear this out. Right. So I've just been running this locally. I believe if I go to build the site, and this is where I might need a little bit of help. npm build Astro. What am I doing? Build Astro. Name build. Hold on, let me go to my Docker file over here. I'll actually copy the Docker file over at this point just so we can kind of see what it's doing, because this is the one that I got working. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm in this kind of core thing here, and I'm just going to add a Docker file. Right. And so I did this by, I started with just the node latest Docker file image. I make an app directory so I can kind of port everything over. I do some good, and I admit I had to Google these, but like, I move package.json first and then do the TS config and that kind of stuff just to make the build kind of cleaner and faster. I run the npm install, and then I copy over basically that application code. And public is kind of where you keep all of your static assets, images and that kind of stuff. And the Astro config, and then I can run this, npm run Astro build. And so that's sort of like the first part of the container. Now, I struggled with it because something kind of strange happens, and I actually kind of want to try something real quick, which I haven't tried before, which is Astro actually compiles the whole site to a /dist folder.
Okay.
And that wasn't like immediately obviously clear to me. So I was doing kind of that classic, Node tutorial. Hey, I'm just going to do this, then I'm going to run the entry point, or I know Danny command, to do the npm run Astro dev, and it was like breaking, and it wasn't finding what I needed. And since it's in a Docker container, it's like kind of hard to debug. And I was going through all of that, and it was kind of frustrating. So since it was very frustrating, I'm going to just try doing it again on stream. So let's see. So I'm here. I can do Docker build, and I'll give this a name, and we'll call it, test Astro, and do that. Right. So
Okay.
So hopefully what this is going to do is go pull the node latest image. It's going to try to, whoa, Docker file can't be empty. Oh, save your Docker file, Peter. Feels good to be back streaming. So cool. So it's going through and doing, like the node build and all of that. I'll be very curious to see if this actually like works and runs anything. It'll take a second to do all the kind of node installs and stuff like that. Is this tracking so far? Am I like?
It is,
and
I've got
interested.
This has prompted a number of questions, and I think that maybe we should take a look at that. So one question that we have here, I'm just gonna have to scroll back up here. So I don't know, Pete, if you will know the answer to this based on your experimentation so far, but Corazon asks, so if that svelte component is an island, how well does it handle interaction with state, with view island, if you were to add different frameworks?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I do know, the Astro, that was one thing I didn't touch on. Astro is built on this islands framework, which of course is referring to, which is that everything's sort of like a, its own thing, and then that's what it wants to build. I haven't done a lot of state with this app. I was just building a very simple markdown blog, which I didn't get into some of the markdown support. I'm happy to kind of walk through that, as things happen. But the markdown support in here is really, really good. I don't know about the interoperability between kind of svelte and view components. Corzin, I don't know if you're in or from the front end horse community, but if you go to frontend.horse, it's a really fun community. We're at Slim.AI, we're at Slim.AI, and we have a community around containers and building and optimizing containers. But if you're interested in some of these more front end kind of React style questions, I definitely recommend the front end horse community. They have a Discord channel. It's really awesome, really friendly and supportive community, and they have an Astro channel there, and there are definitely people there who could answer that question. So that'd be kind of my recommendation.
That's helpful. And Danny and Graham were both had similar observations, and they were saying that they weren't keen on using like CSS class names within the HTML, if you like. I know it wasn't quite HTML, but within the HTML, because that was historically something that web developers had tried to get away from with CSS, which was embedding styling in the HTML. And Danny was sort of saying they didn't understand why we're sort of going back to doing the same thing again. I sort of suggested that, well, as with all things, it's sort of the circle of life, and what's old is new again.
Yeah.
And Graham added that what they had observed is that they wonder if it's most popular with people who weren't around for that last big push to move CSS out, and that from their observation, the people who are comfortable with CSS seem to be the ones who aren't adopting Tailwind. So it's interesting, I suppose what I like about this is it really doesn't matter which camp you fall in with regards to how you want to organize your CSS. What I'm learning about Astro is you can really pick the tools you want to use and build with those tools within Astro. And I think that's probably the bigger takeaway for me with regards to Astro itself. I can make those. It sounds a bit grand, but I can make those technology choices for myself rather than having something that's sort of overtly opinionated dictate to me what I'm going to be using.
Yeah, and I think that I think you are right, like that there's kind of this circular aspect to it. I think some of what happened, and I'm not sold on Tailwind one way or the other. Like in my project, I ended up doing it kind of both different ways because I got kind of twisted around on where Tailwind was, and then what if I wanted to like, there's a certain way that you style the markdown files actually. So if you want to style an H1 in markdown, you actually can't do that in Tailwind, or at least I don't know how to do it. It wasn't obvious to me how to do it in Tailwind, and I struggled with that for a little while, and then I ended up just using, more classic CSS styles on my article template to do that. So I did end up kind of doing it both ways. The argument that I read for Tailwind, I think, has to do with sort of what Corzin was talking about with this islands architecture, where, when you're pulling things in, kind of the worst thing is like you have something, like I said before, like a CSS style, it's called title, and then some other web developer uses title somewhere else,
Right.
and then, God forbid those two things get pulled into the same component or something at some point, and then, you've got this kind of mess. That might be a simplified version of the problem that Tailwind was trying to solve. But I think it's probably more popular in some of these, kind of componentized frameworks. That said, I hear you guys. I mean, I think there are people who love Tailwind, there are people who hate Tailwind.
I think your explanation is helpful though, because I think it answers sort of Danny's critique as to why the styling is named after its purpose, as opposed to having sort of a more generic class name. So, as somebody who has just enough CSS knowledge to be dangerous, that did make sense. Did make sense to me.
Yeah.
And as we were saying, you can choose which way you want to go with Astro.
Well, right, and all of the CSS is being compiled into, I don't know if I can show a good example of this in the browser window. I guess I can, right, which is, if you go to the browser window, Martin, and you kind of show that, like, and this is just very similar to other, kind of React style JavaScript frameworks, right? Like you're getting all of this kind of compiled stuff. So there isn't like a class, like Astro is actually like building this CSS for you and then outputting it. So you're not having these sort of like classic styles. So to use things like Tailwind, I'll need to look and see if it actually, I guess I can look at my own site and see if this actually survives through the end. It does. So yeah, so while like the CSS that you're building into Astro, say you're using that style tag down at the bottom, that's going to get one of these sort of like wonky sort of things here. This font sans, W full, margin on the y-axis is 4, margin on the bottom is 12. That type of stuff is all Tailwind. So to me, that like is actually pretty nice because I don't have to spend a lot of time remembering how do I do margin bottom, how do I, and do that 100 times while going through. I just go through W full, blah, 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 blah. So that actually was pretty nice on the styling part.
Right.
But I totally hear you guys. Like I think there's a lot of different debate that goes on with this stuff. So.
There is a fantastic discussion happening in the chat, debating the various merits of these approaches, and Corinzin says, as I think we being the industry, move towards micro front ends and islands, it pushes towards keeping styles with the components. So this has been fascinating for me, and thank you all for those of you that are having a very well-based sort of technical discussion in the chat. Thank you for sharing what you know in the chat. It's very interesting for me to sort of scan as we're going through this. Very helpful.
You came for the container talk, you're staying for the CSS debate, and here we are. front-end.Slim.AI. But I think it's really, I think it's a really cool debate, and I think it's kind of cool to see the confluence of these technologies, as more developers are asked to do, think about deployments of different things, like Corson said at the very top of the hour, like, hey, you want some flexibility in moving between different platforms. Containers can give you that, but container technology is like a world unto itself, as we know, and that's, can make it difficult for, your average kind of person who cares about CSS and JavaScript and wants just really beautiful UX user experiences and they don't really want to spend a lot of time debugging Docker files or figuring out, different base images and all that kind of stuff. It's cool to see these things kind of come together. So, okay. Are there more questions? Should we try to run this container and see what happened and whether I messed up or not? I probably
Should
did,
we be in the IDE? There
let's
we
give
go.
it a try. Yeah, let's see. So I'm just gonna see if I can remember the magic incantation for my Docker file to run it. So as a reminder, I just built this in kind of a sort of naive way with the node latest container. And I'm going to try to run Astro build there. And I actually don't know what this is going to do. It might work, and I might be like really happy that it worked. But it looks like something didn't work there.
Okay.
So I'll just look over at my browser real quick and see what happened. And yeah, it looked like that did not run. Let me see if I can just get a quick Docker logs on. I just do my Docker logs straight here. Yeah, I have no containers running. And it looks like, let me see if I can find the logs for this one. I guess I didn't name that one, so I'm not exactly sure which logs I'm supposed to be looking at here, but yeah, that might not be the right one. So let me just go back there real quick. Oops, what did I do?
Whilst you're doing that, I saw a question earlier from Graham asking about the copy statements in the Docker file where you're copying from a name to the same name, and they were asking, was there any benefit of that over copying from the name to just dot referencing, the directory you want to place it in? No, they're equivalent in this case. It can be helpful if you've got sort of a templated approach to your Docker file and you want to change the names of things as they go in. The other thing that I've been finding useful recently to sort of minimize or improve sort of the cache reuse is to do any permission changes within the copy commands rather than doing those separately.
Yep. And the real answer to that question, of course, which is that's just the way I copy and pasted it from the website where I found this Docker file. And it was the one that worked. How I code, sorry. Cool. I don't see exactly where this image was. So I think what I'm just going to say is, basically there's something going wrong. And this was what I encountered the first time. There's something that just like Astro doesn't like about this statement. So, it could be that I'm using the wrong ports. It could be that I'm, somewhere else. But
actually, have you exposed a port in that Docker file? I didn't. Did I miss that?
No, I did not. Do I need to? Oh, expose. That could be it. Let me try rebuilding real quick. See if that changed anything for me. But while that's building, actually, if you jump over to the browser window, what I ended up doing with this, and I didn't know this website before. I haven't used Northflank. I don't really know anything about it, so I'm not kind of recommending it. But in my Google searches, so I was struggling with just getting this node container working for Astro for a while, and it could be my lack of understanding on Docker. It could be my lack of understanding on Node. I don't know. But I ended up kind of like Googling for an answer, and I ended up finding this, which I knew immediately, right, was a multi-stage build.
Right.
And for some of the more front-end people, multi-stage build is basically you build the image once as a development image, and then you take that final layer, Docker files built in layers, of course, and you take that final layer of what you had created, and then you put it onto basically another image to be sort of the base image for that image. And I had seen this caddy image around before because on the Slim platform, we are really into container internals, and I'd seen caddy, I'd seen it recommended by people in the past, but I really didn't know what it did. And so to see it in a multi-stage build, I was like, okay, this is cool. Let me try this. And it just kind of worked out of the box, and I was like really impressed. And so I thought that would be a cool thing to kind of dive into and look at, and that's kind of where I wound up. So,
right.
we could spend some painful time kind of debugging why my container image didn't work, but I think it might just be more useful to kind of uncomment the back half of my multi-stage build.
Okay.
And then we can run that and we'll see how that goes.
Okay.
So
you probably don't want
cool.
the expose line in there that you've just added, in which case I don't.
Yeah, I took it out.
Okay,
I did take it out. Yeah. So the full Docker file again is, from node latest. I could pin the version there, but I don't think I need to for right now.
So
development.
For those people that aren't familiar with multi-stage builds, what this is effectively going to do is to take the artifacts that were built by Astro and deposit those into the directory that the Caddy web server serves up by default. So you'll end up with a container that is the Caddy web server with the assets for your site bolted on to the back of it.
Right. Yeah, and we should walk through that. So I'm naming this Docker file as build, and this is called the builder pattern, right?
Right.
So this one is going to be called build, and everything that happens up until the second from statement is the build image.
Yeah.
And then this is going to be the final image. So I'm saying from build, and then this was kind of the aha moment for me, was to see this file, and then it connected to something I had found in the Astro docs, just kind of had scrolled over, didn't really think about it too much, but that on build, Astro actually outputs everything to a /dist folder, and that's where you kind of like run your deployments from. Right. My understanding, and I could be wrong about this, but like things like Netlify and Dino and those kinds of things sort of know that about an Astro site already, and so they don't, you just need to, give them your GitHub link and they handle everything else for you. In this case, like that was what was tripping me up, was that I actually need to run this from /dist. I can't run it from, or at least that's where the files are. And so that's something along the lines of what's happening with that node image. But Caddy is sort of purpose built for this to say, okay, this dist image, it's going to go into where Caddy expects to find it. And then it knows everything to do from there. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's interesting.
Cool. So yeah, so let me, I'm going to run this build again. And I just built it, so this one should be relatively quick. And then I think what would be cool would be I can actually push this one, well, if we confirm that it works. So that was actually pretty quick, and I think one of the reasons it was quick was I'd already done all of the build steps.
Yeah, the previous layers, yeah.
Right, so all it was really doing was taking that dist file, the builder image, and then pushing it, into the Caddy image and then running it. So, okay, I'm going to do my Docker run statement again. And actually, there's something that breaks here, and I need to remember kind of how to debug it. And let's see if maybe we can do this together. So that runs the image, but I think what I'm going to run into is that one of the things that took me a little bit to get was actually this image is actually running on port 2019. That's just a Caddy default.
Right.
And so I had to kind of see that in the output.
Right.
It's reasonably helpful, but it's supposed to be kind of mapping that to port 80. So
right.
I don't remember off the top of my head exactly where I'm going to find this one, but I think what I need to do, I actually don't find it anywhere. So I just tried it in the browser and it doesn't work. But I think what I need to do on the magical Docker invocation here is actually map the port. And I think what I need to do is map port 2019 to port 80.
Okay.
I think. Let's see if it is something along those lines. And maybe, did I do that backwards? Maybe. This is where I need Danny's help because I can never remember how to do port mapping in Docker. I might have done that wrong, so let me
Is it listening on
again.
HTTPS or just HTTP at the moment?
So, it's just on HTTP. That's a good call. There is something cool with that with Caddy, which actually Caddy has built-in HTTP support. And what's going on?
Yeah, it looks like it might be redirecting.
Oh yeah, unable to connect. Yeah, it's automatic. Is this just a Firefox issue? Let me see if it works on Chrome. What did I do?
Yeah.
All right, this might take me a little more debugging than I thought. I thought this was simple, but Oh no, you know what it was? I stopped running the container. That would do it. You guys just didn't come here to see the best developers in the world, but we're glad that you're here with us.
So whilst you're just going over that, Danny has got some observations about Caddy, which is kind of relevant to what we were just discussing there about HTTP. And something that I've seen it and used it for, and that's that you can use Caddy as ingress with Let's Encrypt certificate providers, so that you can set up new deployments in your K8s cluster or whatever. And we did something similar some time ago where we created a little Nginx front end to one of our projects that had Let's Encrypt baked inside it in order to do all of that good stuff. Oh, hello, it's working.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, and that's really cool. That's what I was going to say is actually, the HTTPS can actually be built in. I didn't do that on this, just kind of this like dev image, but I did that on so when I brought this over to Google Cloud Run, I actually ended up getting kind of like the HTTPS or SSL kind of out of the box, which was really nice. I mean, I don't know if that was Google Cloud doing that or the Caddy thing that was doing that, but I didn't have to go get certs. I didn't have to go remember how to configure Nginx securely, which Martin can attest to. I ask him probably on a monthly basis how you do that, and he always sends me the same Nginx configuration file. But so that was really nice. It honestly like kind of made my day. So it's really nice, intuitive thing. So cool. All right, so this is working. So that's great. I think what I might do, I'm gonna take this down, and as long as we have time, I think I'm just gonna push this image up because it doesn't have anything special in it, and we can kind of just take a look and see what we did on the Slim platform. Does that sound good? Cool.
So I will, whilst you're doing that, I'll also say that quite often you'll see multi-stage builds used in combination with something like distroless to sort of tackle container package access in order to get your container package sizes under control, and the correlation there is fewer packages, fewer software items and components that you're shipping. The likelihood is the more secure your container is. And what I would say is I've been doing a presentation around various places this year, which is 5 best container security best practices. And what I've found is it really doesn't matter how your container is composed, whether you're using Alpine or multi-stage with distroless, you can still minimize, harden, optimize, all of the words that we use to describe the slimming process. You can still go through that additional stage of minifying and hardening the image with our tools, the open source Docker Slim or the Slim.AI platform, regardless of what your starting point was with the container composition. That's actually an interesting. Oh, I just learned something about Docker too myself as we were talking. It's interesting, right? Because and I think we can actually see that. We'll see that in a second. But this original image when I was building the node one, and again, it didn't work, but it probably didn't work because operator error on my part. What I just learned is when you retag an image, it actually untags the old image, but keeps the image. I always wonder why I have all these images that are nuns in my thing. So if anybody has a script for getting rid of images without names, I will take it. Or a magic command. I'm sure somebody in chat knows that. But this original one was 1.28 gigabytes, right? Because that's using node latest. Again, I could have used node slim, I could have used distroless, I could use Alpine, I could use a smaller base image for sure. But I decided to use node latest because I'm not good at node. And when I use the Caddy image in this multi-stage build, again, it's kind of starting with Caddy, and then it's taking my very generic Astro site, and then it's going to put it on top of Caddy. It's only 46 megabytes because the Caddy image, if we go back over to the web browser, is 17 megabytes. Right.
That's what I was just looking at. So this is the Slim.AI platform, and you can see a lot about container internals. That's like what our platform does. But if you come here, it's 47 megabytes uncompressed, 17 megabytes compressed.
Okay.
So
one of the reasons why that's so small is that looks like that's built using Alpine as its base image. Yeah.
Right. Right, right. So now we've made a choice, right? So
Yeah.
If Alpine and Alpine, a lot of debate in the community. We think use the thing that works for you. Some people can get frustrated with Alpine because it has some challenges around sort of low-level DNS errors or different configuration issues, and so now since I'm using the caddy image as my base, now I've made a choice to Alpine that might not have been obvious to me at the time. So that's another good use. Yeah, that's actually a really good call. So, the node latest image is going to be built on Debian. So now by using a multi-stage build, I've actually changed base images without necessarily knowing that was the case.
And this is what our tools are great for exposing. I had a similar experience recently. I built one of our sample apps inside multiple containers using different container composition techniques, including distroless, and it was a Python app, and I had some difficulty making the distroless app, and that was because there was ABI breakage between my dev stage and the bolting it onto distroless, where they were using different versions of Python. So I was actually using our tools to go and look at the distroless containers to see, well, what version, what distro were they actually built with, and what version of Python was in that in order to make the compatible choices in my build stage. So I found it very useful, to solve those problems.
Right. Yeah, and if I'd been on my kind of regular machine, I don't have Docker Desktop on Linux yet, though I hear it's getting quite good these days.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Yeah, so I'll have to install that. I could have used the Slim.AI Docker Desktop extension to do this on my local images without having to push them. This is just like a little testing, so I don't mind pushing it to Docker Hub. But okay, cool. So Caddy, haven't really looked at vulnerabilities in Caddy. I wouldn't expect there to be too many here gripe reports to vulnerabilities, so not too much to worry about there. Small image. So let's take a look, though. I just thought of something cool that we could do, which is, and I pushed this image up to the site a second ago, so you can go back and see all of my amazing container images. Hopefully it went up. Sometimes there's a little bit of a time delay, so hopefully we won't run into that, but man, we build a lot of images sometimes. That push, so it might be that we're having a little bit of a time delay. So, we might not be able to see that image, which is too bad, because I don't see the test Astro image latest. So unfortunately, we might need to.
Do you see it on Docker Hub? It has actually finished pushing it up, I assume.
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah, let's see. No. Did I not push it? Did it break? No, it pushed. PSV test Astro latest. Yeah. It should be there. We might just be having some like kind of time delay stuff on Docker Hub side. Let's see. I guess I could log in and see all of this stuff, or I could use my private connector to see it. But
just as I'm not you, I'm just logging in on my screen here to see if I see a different outcome, because I shouldn't have the same cache situation that you have. Oh, turns out I haven't logged in on this machine for a while. I say this machine. I use a specific browser configuration when I stream to make sure that I don't leak in inappropriate work-related stuff on stream. I haven't authenticated it for a while. Right, let's go and.
Good to do. Yeah, I'm a little surprised that's not there yet. Speaking of, here's my password. Well, I guess we might not be able to see that. I guess there are some other ways I could do it. I could I could do run Docker Slim on it and do a diff that way, but I don't really think that that's a good use of our time. So yeah, maybe we'll just see. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts while this is going on, I guess I probably could have run that container again and kind of like looked at it while it was running to see what kind of like logs and stuff like that it was putting out. But again, I don't know that that's like super interesting to people. So we might just need to kind of call it there, though.
Okay.
I was really hoping that we could kind of try to get to slim this quickly, but
so
yeah,
I do have some feedback, because you had a request for help earlier on cleaning up images. So there's been several responses here. Danny started with Docker image prune as one way to do cleanup, and then Graham suggested that let's just put this up on the screen. Doesn't the prune command delete all images for which there isn't a running container, and we'd need to filter it on the none tag? So the debate goes on, and then Phil Clifford, hello Phil.
Oh, hey Phil. Hey, Phil.
Offered a little shell one-liner. So
okay, yeah.
that's in the chat. I'll cut that out and I'll paste that to you in Discord, Pete.
Okay. Well, I think if we're giving away Slim swag to winners, Danny is correct. Well, running Docker prune, I did know about Docker image prune, and I've struggled with it for some reason. Maybe those containers were running or something, or had failed. In this case, it did actually clean up all of my none images. So plus to Danny.
Well done, Danny.
But yeah, Phil's solution was kind of what I had in mind, because I do things like, Docker image, like Docker RMI $sign Docker images, and just like let it run, and that's really kind of like torching the earth. So I thought you guys might have some better recommendations. I'm really sad that this isn't.
I've logged in
I'm
from my perspective as well, and
yeah, I'm just also surprised. Maybe, I think I know what it was. Let me see if this works. No, it says Slayer already exists. I thought maybe I needed to be logged in on my desktop for Docker Hub, but I'm really just I'm surprised it's not on Docker Hub. I could see RI APIs.
Yeah, I can't see Slim PSV on Docker Hub. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong. Oh, actually, I'm looking in the wrong place. Ignore that.
Yeah, it's just weird.
Yeah.
I'm on my. Anyway, all right. Well, I might just need to kind of call it that, or maybe
I can see it. I can see it on Docker Hub. It just says
you
a
can.
few seconds
Okay.
ago. Yeah.
What's wrong with my computer?
Yeah, I can see.
All right. Well, if you can see it,
but it only just appeared a minute ago, according to Docker Hub. So maybe it was a hold up their end.
Oh, maybe it was that I needed to log in then just to push it, because I just pushed it a minute ago after I was logged in. But it said all of this stuff existed already. So, okay. So you can see it.
I can see it on Docker Hub, and it literally says it was there moments ago.
Okay. Am I blind? I mean, this should be like in my repository. Right?
Yeah, that's what I just looked at. /r.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so maybe it's just not in the search yet. Maybe they're like search indexes need to update or something like that. So let me see if I'd have to do this with. Tell you what, do me a favor, take away my browser window for a second, and
sure thing. Hang on one moment. Let me go here.
I will just log into a slightly different Slim.AI account that I have, and we can see if maybe maybe I can get it through one of my private connectors, to do that. So that'll take me a second, but and maybe it'll show up in the search in a second, but let me just do a little foo here, a little authentication foo stuff, and see what we can do. And hopefully that works, and that should have worked. And then portal.slim.dev is the website for anybody that wants to check out this platform that we're looking at. And this is my demo account, and this has my connected registries, and I just want the big reveal to see that it's there. Okay, you can show my browser window
I
again.
can show your browser window. Okay, then here we go.
Yep. So the difference here is rather than going through the search, I have connected a registry, in this case, my personal Docker Hub, up to this. And oops, apologies to our designers for doing a zoom in on our platform on the screen always. But then if I come over here and I go to my connected registries, this is an argue to connect your registries, I guess, even for public images, is that
Right,
a little faster for you. Here's my test to Astro image, and here I can go to latest. And, you know, I can see that the test Astro image is actually not that much bigger than the Caddy image itself, again, because we just have a very small Astro site. And that, you know, again, kind of back to the very beginning, like Astro's goals, island architecture, really small images, or really small JavaScript footprints. So, and then what I wanted to do was kind of look at this, you know, so I know that the entry point for this is going to be the same as Caddy, because Caddy is serving that. So I'm not looking for the like app dist file, or like in some of the more traditional node images looking for the npm image. But I do think I should be able to click into here somewhere.
So in user share Caddy, I think your assets for your site should be in.
Cool. Oh, good. That would have taken me a minute to find, so thank you. And I guess I could have used search there for dist. Is that it? Share.
Yeah, so there's the index.html. So if you click that, we should be able to view it inside the, and then file content. We should see your site.
Oh, yeah. Oh, cool. Oh, okay. I actually didn't realize that's what that was doing. I didn't realize that Caddy was also basically, well, yeah, right. So, okay, so Astro is actually outputting just the, I was like expecting to find something that looked like a node package, but you're right. Like Astro is outputting
it's the compiled
all
assets.
the HTML.
Yeah.
And then that's just dropping it like a static site into
the
where Caddy is going to serve it, just like Nginx would have served it. Ah, cool. Well, I hadn't done that before, so I learned something today. That's really cool. Yeah, and that's cool. So it looks like they're using a bunch of stuff here. So really neat. Okay, so we can see those are all of our assets. And actually, one of the things that I was thinking about that we could do is we could actually diff this between Caddy.
Oh, that's
like
a nice idea. Yeah.
And Caddy, and that'll kind of show us what this would be. I think library Caddy. Yeah, there we go. So if I do a diff of this between Caddy latest, which I used as, again, you know, kind of the base image for the multi-stage build, and I compare it to the image that I just built, you know, what the only difference between those things really should be
the assets.
Yep.
Then
here
there
we
they
are the assets, and there they are. So that's cool. So that really shows, you know, I think like one thing that a lot of people new to multi-stage builds say is like, you know, I don't really understand what the hell's going on here. You know, like what am I copying from? What do I really need?
Right.
What does the base image have that the original image doesn't have? Does it have the node modules? Does it not? So, you know, that's kind of a cool look. And then we'll do one more, and then I think we'll have to call it. But
okay.
Let's just do the YOLO slimming of this image.
So I can think of one customization we're going to need to make to this slimming process, which is we are going to need to tell it to always include user share Caddy, because that's where our static assets are. And I don't think all of them will get, well, maybe they will for that sample site, but
I guess it would.
It might work.
Let's try it without. Because
let's try without,
like,
actually, yeah.
That's being served. Hopefully it would work. I don't know. We'll find out one way or the other.
Yeah.
So again, this is our optimization tool. This is a server application. I'm not going to do anything here,
that's
but like
fine.
Martin said, we could white label
that's
that.
Fine. We've got that in our back pocket.
Yep. If it doesn't work, then we'll see. And there's the port again, 2019 that it's going to be moving to. I wonder if we should have opened up. I wonder if we should have told it to use
So-
port 80. I wonder if that'll run us into issues.
So I'm just going to respond to Yannick here. Yannick is citing a sort of a brand of projects that we've created in our sort of Linux nerds community, where everything is quick something, and Yannick is suggesting we need quick slim. Well, that's what Slim.AI is. So Slim.AI is the quick slim that sits on top of Docker Slim. So we don't need to make it, it exists.
Yeah, that's sort of the idea. Okay, so here we just cut 6 megabytes out of the
Cool.
image. It looks like we took
That's
took
nearly
out some of the.
that's, what, 11%?
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, from a small image to a small image, so
Yeah.
that's not bad. I think as a reminder to kind of what you were saying, right? Like, there's more to hardening an image than just removing files and removing vulnerabilities. So,
Right.
the Caddy server had shells in it that it didn't need.
Yeah.
There's some stuff that happened in the slimming process that goes above and beyond just kind of the image removal. Look at the vulnerabilities. I don't know that it's not really going to make a difference because
I was going to say it will be the same actual binary and its dependent libraries that will exist in there.
So that's not really too big of a deal.
I did notice it's a slightly older version of Alpine, so maybe it might be possible to choose a different Caddy base image or something like that.
Yeah, it could be for sure. Nothing too interesting happening in the slimming process because we have the multi-stage build. But again, it's always good to do that. And if here we're using a multi-stage build, not necessarily for the purposes of image slimming, which is one of the use cases, but actually to be like a server host for this Astro image.
You're using it as a component. So it's a great example of how to use container technology, I think, to sort of take the assets from something and then wrap it around a service or a daemon. We've seen similar things with Let's Encrypt and stuff like that in the past, but this is much more interesting. Also, the size of that container, I'm thinking, where are the free sort of microservice hosting options where you could host your own personal blog for no money whatsoever, because now you've got this 40 meg container.
Yeah, well, I'll say, and my website, personal website, which is still very much a work in progress, and I don't know if BigPod's here yet, but BigPod is always very helpful, but I think it's this Slovenian in him that is just very literal. And so I showed BigPod this, so I was very proud of myself. I said, look, I built this multi-stage build using Astro and all that. He's like, it really doesn't look very good on mobile, Peter.
I'm sure there's a component you can include in Astro for that, though, right?
Yeah. Like, I know, man. I'm trying. I'm trying. But he's right. I have a lot of work to do on it. But I will say it is nice. Like, I'm basically running it on Google Cloud for free, and hooking. Once I got it into the container, putting it in Google Cloud run as a container was like so simple. It was so simple, and so I can walk through it at a later time. I would just be looking at like Google Cloud consoles, which isn't interesting to anybody. But with the tens of visits that I get every month, well, just for the past month, which is probably me and BigPod, and BigPod on his phone. I'm basically hosting it for free because it's a very small image. It doesn't, it spins up really quickly. It's a pretty good situation for me.
I need to look into that. I've got some, not so much for my own, but family members that have really small sites just for business contact inquiries and sort of customer portfolios of work that they've done. I think this would be interesting for me to look at to, one, update those sites to some modern sort of web presentation technologies, but then be able to deploy them on something I don't have to pay to host. And also it's probably more reliable than, my janky connection of, VPSs. So I think I'm going to definitely take a look at this as a sort of improving sort of the family web presences that I look after.
Yeah. Well, and I know you and I both, we talk a lot about like using Markdown. We didn't get into the Markdown functionality in Astro, but I think that's actually one of the best parts of Astro is like Markdown is just so nice. It's so easy to use. It's so intuitive. I know that's the case with a lot of like kind of, editors of this style, but I really found that really, really nice. It was really easy to use, and so I was very happy with that. I love writing in Markdown, and so Astro is great for that use case. And yeah, I saw this kind of tweet out there right after I finished up that somebody had said something along the lines of, like, non-developers use hosted blog platforms. Junior developers use someone else's blog framework. Senior developers write their own blog framework, and staff developers use hosted blog platforms. And so I was like, which one do I fit into? I guess I'm kind of in the junior developer bucket because I really liked Astro. So yeah.
So Corazin asks, so once you have the container done, does it help you connect your container to the hosting, or is that down to you as the developer? So I think what you basically decided is which platform you were going to host your container on, and you went through the steps for that container hosting provider to expose your container.
I can show it just very quickly, I think. I just want to make sure I'm not like giving away any personal secrets here. Yeah, if you show the browser window real quick, I just put it up, and this is kind of an eye chart for Google Cloud, but I did this. I use this Google Cloud Run. You have to use Google Cloud Container Repository, so I had to push the container to GCR.
Right.
But once I did that, it was very, very simple. You just basically come in. I think if I do edit and deploy new version here, you can see I have my, this is my container that I built, and I just push it, and I just had to put in a few things here, and then it was up and running. And I had to do a little bit of DNS configuration. Basically, like I had bought the domain name on Google Cloud as well, so it was like pretty simple to make that transition. But I just had a little copy and pasting, a little Googling to do to get it there. But I'd say that whole thing probably took 30 minutes once I got the container up on GCR. So yeah, you can stop sharing that so I don't accidentally share an API key or something. But yeah, so that was like, it wasn't quite as direct as, like Netlify or something like that. But now the container's up there, all I really have to do is push a new container to GCR, and then there are some like, kind of triggers and DevOps-y kind of things that I can do to do kind of CI and CD. I haven't really gotten to that stage yet, but new push of the container. I got a new site. I got a new update to the site.
That's pretty great, isn't it? Yeah.
So
That's where the world works now. Well, thank you, Pete, for showing us, some new skills that you've picked up. I'm gonna take this away as something that I'm gonna start using, particularly the stick it in somewhere to host it for free. I think this, with serverless and what have you, I think these are great containers that you can throw at, serverless as well, because they're going to be so small. Ideal. Right. So thank you all very much for those of you that stopped by. It has been a great discussion in chat on a number of technologies as we've been presenting this. That's always great to see. We will be back next week, but I don't know what the topic's going to be just yet, but we'll definitely be back next week.
I had an idea, and I'm just I'll put a teaser out there. I was thinking something around the Docker extension hackathon.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And if you're in our Discord channel, and if you're not, go to Slim.AI and you'll find the Discord link at the bottom. Jump in our Discord. I'll post something about it. Docker's running this extensions hackathon. It's really cool. We have a Docker extension. The cool thing about Docker extensions is they all run as containers. So it's pretty cool. Our extension is not part of the hackathon, unfortunately, because it's not an open source project. It's really kind of tied into our platform. But there are a number of good open source projects that are extensions, and they're running this hackathon. So I thought maybe, and Martin, maybe we could get co-op Steven to come join us.
Yeah, we could. Yeah.
So he and I can just bang on some of those. Maybe we try to slim some of the extension containers, because a lot of them are publicly available. And we can try that, and we'll post it in the Discord. And if people want to help join us, or we can put a team together or something, that would be fun. So
excellent. Well, let's do that then. So that's what we'll be doing next week. Now, whilst we've been presenting, I have found another streamer who is streaming Astro related stuff, so we're going to go and raid their channel. Awesome. It's B Holmes Dev. I've never seen them before,
Oh,
but
yeah.
they're
Yeah,
still
we know.
going.
We know. I forget his first name, but he's actually the moderator of the front end horse community. So that's
well,
awesome.
there we
Stuff
go
stuff
then.
over
So
there.
we are going
Yeah,
to
totally.
head over there
Totally.
to do some raiding. So thank you all very much. It's
Awesome.
Ben apparently. So
Ben
we're gonna
Holmes,
head
that's
over
right.
there
Yep.
to say hello. So thank you all very much for coming,
Perfect.
and we will see you all soon. Thanks, Pete, and bye to everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Good seeing you.